This is Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. I'm your host, Maureen Metcalf, the founder and CEO of the Innovative Leadership Institute, where we help leaders be future ready. Helping us in this mission today is Joe Nardone, President and CEO of the Columbus Regional Airport Authority. We'll be talking about his leadership journey as he continues to guide significant development efforts at the airport. And underlying that conversation is the theme of leaders maintaining a sense of wonder, which allows them to create experiences for all of us that exceed our past experience. And Joe's in the midst of that as he helps launch Columbus's new airport.
It's great to be here, Maureen. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you today.
And likewise, I have long appreciated who you are and how you work, so I'm delighted that you're able to join us today.
Thank you so much.
You've overseen significant development efforts at the airport. Can you share your vision for the airport's future and the strategic initiatives that you're implementing to achieve that vision?
Well, thank you for that question, Maureen. We are so excited to be building a brand new terminal at Columbus Airports. Columbus is a very dynamic, what I call charismatic community, yet the airport here is the only thing, as I like to say, around here that's older than me. It was opened in 1958, and they've been talking about a new terminal for decades. When I arrived in Columbus in 2018, during my interview process, our board said, "Can we build a terminal?" I said, "Sure, let me figure that out." And I looked at the financials and they had $15 million. So 15 million towards a couple of billion doesn't really go very far. So the last 6 or 7 years, our team, with extraordinary leadership of our board of directors, has put us in a position to save $250 million, which we needed to convince the airlines to allow us to build this terminal, because ultimately the airlines pay a big share of the bill. So the strategic initiative from the winter, or actually December of 2017 when they hired me, through today, has been our North Star has been finding a way to build a terminal. And there's thousands of decisions, Maureen, that go into that process. So it's cost cutting, it's revenue generation, it's all kinds of things. But I have to really take my hat off to my board of directors, all of whom are the best of the best. We have an extraordinary board of directors, leaders in the community, and our team. Maureen, our team stayed with us. I describe it as Columbus grit. As you know, Maureen, I'm from Detroit, and we have something called grit up there. And we had plenty of work to do and a lot of sacrifice to get to this point where there's now about $200 million of construction that's been taking place over the last few months. But since when we hired our architect in 2022, this has been a work in progress.
When did you break ground?
We officially broke ground, and there was a big event on December the 9th of 2024, but I can tell you that was the formal event. We had been really working on this for some time. There had been a lot of projects that had been done in advance of this project. There's a lot of things that were underway, a utility corridor, different ways to make sure that when we get to this point, we could actually execute. So we put a lot of the basics in place, and now you're really seeing the actual construction contract, $1.6 billion with the largest airport contractor in the U.S. We also, Hensel Phelps, we also hired one of the preeminent architects, Gensler, who is the largest architect in the world, who's designed airports all around the world, to have the best combination, the best professionals in the business to make sure Columbus ended up with the absolute best airport that we could build for them.
And so that links brilliantly to this idea of a sense of wonder. What do you want people to experience?
So that's a great question, Maureen. Columbus does have a sense of wonders. Columbus is a community that is on the grow, continues to grow, has many universities, has many young people in this community. But the bottom line is we need to deliver the best terminal project that will deliver the best customer experience for everybody who walks through this terminal. We want people to say, "I went to Columbus and they had a terrific airport terminal." And we are about doing that right now. And it's not just seeing things. It's not just about concessions. It's not just about curb front. It's not just about the design. It's about the experience. How do you feel when you use the Columbus airport? And we've endeavored from the very beginning to make sure it was a good experience for people. I mentioned how exceptional our board is. Our board said, hey, Joe, we don't want you comparing against any other airports. We don't want you comparing against other forms of transit. We want to compare you against LinkedIn and Apple and all the most progressive companies in the world that will give people the best experience and make sure they don't forget Columbus or their visit here.
You've traveled around the world. What was a characteristic of an airport that you felt really stood out? What gives you the positive sense of wonder of, I really want to engage with this community, and that engagement started with stepping off the airplane?
I just had an experience at Salt Lake City. Now, this is pretty flatland. This is Ohio. We don't have a lot of water and we don't have a lot of natural features. But when I walked out of the airport at Salt Lake City and could see the Rocky Mountains, that was extraordinary. So while we can't compare to that, that brings a certain sense of place into that airport, right? So our sense of place, I can tell you that we are creating beautiful vistas by having views of downtown from our concourse, and we're going to have a grand marketplace where most people can see their gates from a central location. So it's the comfort and warmth of the terminal that we have now. We've pulled everything very close together. We have a consolidated rental car facility that's close. We have a new parking structure that's close. So we pulled everything together, but it's the warmth of Columbus in the most modern facility.
A feeling of innovation and warmth really does seem to epitomize how we present ourselves, and airport terminals are not always known for their warmth.
Look, Maureen, the key is moving passengers, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, airlines who pay a big portion of that, we have a very grand skylight called the Oculus in the middle of the central marketplace. We are going to provide and produce things that we will make Columbus airports unforgettable, but it's the feel. So that's hard to describe. There will be local participation in our concessions programs. This is a fantastic food city, so we're looking forward to we have to go through a very specific process because we have the FAA, we have a lot of things that we have to do. But sense of place, so you know you're in Columbus. So if you go to New Orleans, I haven't been to the new terminal, but New Orleans had many of the restaurants that you fly to New Orleans and say, I want to eat at this restaurant. Well, they actually have it in their airport. So it happens in Chicago. It happens a lot of places. We want people to feel we are the newest, most modern, but we're also comfortable. And we're also, for people we are what they call an origination and destination airport. Maureen, you know that I ran a large hub airport, Detroit Metropolitan Airport. 50% of the people that travel to Detroit never leave the terminal. The people that come and go from Columbus are either coming or going generally. We're not a connecting airport. So you live here, you're coming to visit family, so you have a specific purpose or reason to be in Columbus, and we want to make sure that it's exciting to the people that are coming.
As the city evolves, so is our infrastructure.
It's critical. And I'm a huge supporter, and we've taken much into consideration on the public transit side. I worked with the former CEO of CODA, our bus system, Joanna Pinkerton. We have set aside space if we ever do end up with transit downtown, meaning rail. But we also have the opportunity at our ground transportation center to accommodate CODA buses with the new bus rapid transit here. So it all comes together, to your point. These are the things that separate many communities from Columbus, but we're on it.
You said 2017, you started with 15 million, now you're over 200. What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced, and what helped you overcome those challenges?
I've been very fortunate in my career and through my life to be supported by folks who helped me. And ultimately, as you know, I've worked at Detroit Metro Airport. I worked in the real estate development business. I was a managing director of a plant in Europe where they didn't speak my language. Well, most of them spoke English, but it was in Belgium. I would say that the concepts are the same in every business that we have worked in, right? You have to be respectful. This is a very dynamic business, the airport business, but leadership is the same. So having worked in multiple different businesses, it's all about respect, decency. I remember when I got here, and it was a little bit of a challenge. When I talked to them about culture, they looked at me like I had two heads. They said, "What really is culture?" And I said, and people would ask me, I would go to a big group, and there was some resistance. They liked it the way they were, and I get that, and I'm not denigrating the way it was, but we run based on how we treat each other. This business is successful because we treat everybody with respect. Performance is also important, but we have situations, people have things going on, everybody has something, right? So I would say the most important thing that has gotten us here was a culture shift of a more entrepreneurial business. Many airports are bureaucratic. I'm going to be honest with you. We are different, and we are blessed because we have a board that gets it. But leadership is leadership, but it really is evolving, and it evolves, and you have to stay ahead of it. And as we age, we have to understand what younger people want and how to deliver. So we have really worked at being an employer of choice, whether it's our police department, whether it's our administrative staff, whether it's our people who plow the runways or our accounting staff. We have to want people to want to be here. So you start with respect.
You and I were talking during COVID, and you have a workforce that predominantly needs to show up. Your TSA folks have to show up. Your guys, people plowing the runways need to show up. Food service, baggage handlers, and they're outside in cold weather and plowing snow and dealing with sun and everything else. And while airports were less busy, I know we flew in and out of Columbus several times during COVID. The airport was open, fewer flights, but you were open for business.
Yeah, and that's a really good point to make as we talk about the fact that we saved $250 million plus or minus. We also had that little thing called COVID in between. So it makes the accomplishments of our staff even more important and more meaningful. I can tell you, I was pretty lonely. I mean, I'm old enough. I don't know if I know you're not, Maureen, to remember the Maytag repairman. I would walk through the terminal, and the only people I would see were flight crews. So while I sent my whole team home, I came to work every day, meaning the administrative people, not the people that are doing all the things that you described. But COVID affected us. It affected employment, although that seems to have swung back in recent days and months. But you have to keep that. You have to have courage to make the right decisions. You have to have commitment to continue on your mission, and you have to be undeterred, because what will happen is people, and we've had this experience on this project, people who think we're not building it exactly the way they want us to build it are going to resist.
That's humans, right?
Right.
That probably your team, people in the community, architects, engineers, everyone has a point of view.
We had a locker room mentality. We were continuing to power through. And as long as we kept our North Star, and on our project, we really feel like lifting up the community is critically important. We received some resistance from outside parties, from unions and from political leaders and others, because they felt like we weren't making the right decisions, but we were not to be stopped. I mean, you have to, and that's what I call the Columbus grit. We would not be here today if it was not for the impressive work of our team, sacrificing, understanding where we were going, and making sure that we had each other's backs. So if you have each other's backs, look, we don't all agree. Things happen, but as long as you continue following that path and treat people with respect and decency and make them a part of the team, allow them to be heard, and continue to move forward, we had that sort of locker room mentality, and that's why we are where we are today. And I have a great debt of gratitude to my team because they followed where we were going.
I think the stat is something like a third of people will leave during a major transformation because, one, just the economy's changing, the world's changing, folks come and go, but also you are looking for something different during this era of the airport's evolution than was expected before you were building a new terminal.
I had this conversation with one of the most influential business people in the community last night. I had dinner with her, and we all know the easiest thing to do is status quo, right? If you come to work and don't do anything, you're not going to break any eggs and you're not going to make anybody angry with you. Well, we had a very serious commitment to move this thing forward. And you mentioned it earlier. There's been great support from the business community. It always works this way, right? You might have 90 people in favor of you and 10 people who aren't happy because they're not controlling the process. And you have to focus on the 90 people. Sadly, and this is the truth about business, it's also the truth you talked about employees. You end up spending most of your time on the people who are problems. You spend 90% of your time on the 10% of problems. We now have a team, and it's evolved. It's been 7 years. And I will say this respectfully. People have washed out. There are some very good people that just were not a good fit for this entrepreneurial, run fast, get to the finish line, get results type of mentality. It's different for airports. Airports are fine in many cases, just kind of evolving and existing. It's somebody used this acronym or the saying the other day. Either you're going to control the fire or it's going to control you. So we have chosen at Columbus Airports to control the fire.
Which is no small feat.
While we're disappointed by some people that come and go, you end up with the people that are supposed to be where they are when you need them to be where they are. The gentleman who is working on this terminal project for me has worked on 3 terminal projects. So he has experience. He was working on the Kansas City terminal project, which is complete. I don't know if you've been there, but we brought him over here to work with us on the Columbus project. So you get the right team around you, and it really is. And it's interesting. I was talking with this businesswoman last night. It's really about DNA. What do people want? It's the will, right, that gets you to where you have to go. Many people are smart. Many people are talented. But the will to succeed is the thing that separates us. And I'm sure you've seen the talk about grit and the conversation about this just, wasn't always pleasant for me the last couple of years. People were upset because we were moving forward without allowing them to tell us what to do. But we know how to run an airport. And respectfully, people sometimes in this community, in all communities, not just Columbus, want to feel like they're in control. And when you can do this, and we are an extraordinarily independent authority. Many airports are run by cities or counties or the state. We are run by an independent authority. The state of Ohio, we are a port authority, and that makes our board of directors the bottom line. It's where the buck stops. So that has been a real blessing. Frankly, that has helped us a lot when we've gone to get bond debt. That's helped us when we've gone to hire architects, because the decision-making capability that we have at this airport system is quick. You don't have to go to City Hall. You don't have to go to the county commission. You don't have to go to the state legislature. We are an independent authority, and all of those things put together in this big pot that we're stirring has gotten us to this point, because we would not have gotten here without this kind of flexibility.
You didn't start with 90 people agreeing with you and 10 disagreeing. You probably started with a lot less, and it was through untold number of hours meeting and sharing your vision and taking input and refining how you were thinking that allowed you to create the support that the board could help you push this forward.
That's true, Maureen, and it's been very rewarding. It's been a lot of work because it is a big project, but it's been extraordinarily rewarding. So I sit on the Columbus Partnership with 75 or 80 other CEOs, and their support has been unwavering. Now, there's a few who don't understand what we're doing, and I've spent time with them, but it's a process, right? An airport, I've run a real estate development business. I ran a steel business in Europe. I have run cities and counties, and I've done all those kinds of things, which means I'm long in the tooth. But it also, but business is business. There are nuances to all of it. I mean, we're a federally regulated industry. There are a lot of things that are nuances, but business is ultimately is about your people. And it's honoring your people, respecting them, also letting them know when it doesn't work and maybe they should find another place. And those, as I like to say, those things stay with me probably more than they stay with the people that have to exit. But it is, it's about decency and about always being respectful to people, whether they're part of the team or not a part of the team, because ultimately we're all humans. We all have feelings. We all have ups and downs. We all have different levels of sensitivities. But ultimately, the support in the community, even though we've received some resistance from the unions and they wanted to control our project, it's been rewarding. And by the way, we have at this point 80% union participation on this job. So we're
Wow.
putting a lot of food on a lot of tables of union members.
You talked about DNA, and I just wanted to amplify what you had said. We use an assessment that looks at the DNA for processes, programs, and people, and how do we align, and having a differing DNA as the organization changes, the required DNA is going to be different. And for both the organization and the precious humans coming to work every day, recognizing when those shifts no longer align and finding an appropriate exit is maybe equally important to hiring in the people with the DNA that will align with your future direction.
I love that point, Maureen. So my career has been mostly change management and crisis management and fixing things that are broken. And it's basically a finite time schedule, right? You go in, fix a company that's heading towards bankruptcy. You go in and set up a company in Europe. You come into Columbus airports and turn over the table and make it not the bureaucracy that it was, but an entrepreneurial business. However, it will evolve into the next step. So the people that are really excited about doing turnaround business, which is what I've done in my career, mean that those same people are not going to sit here when it's a maintenance organization, when all you're doing are the basics, because there's not a project to do. So it's a really good point, and we're all at different points in our career, and we enjoy different things. For me, it's taking something that's broken and fixing it and hoping the next person doesn't break it.
So you've created a more entrepreneurial, innovative culture. How do you go about shifting a culture? And as you've said, you've done this in Detroit, you've done it in Europe, you've done it in other cities. What's the general thought process and change management process to move how cultures operate? Because that is, in many cases, the secret sauce or the biggest barrier.
We did ERP. We put Workday in here a few years ago. And our human resources people, I give them a lot of credit. They started doing the change management before we started doing the implementation of the new software. So that was critical in our success, getting ahead of it. I can tell you, and we all know this, change is a very difficult thing. When I arrived in Columbus, there was, okay, here's a guy, he's entrepreneurial, he let people go in Detroit because he had a culture that he wanted. If you're not respectful to people, you're not going to work here, okay? You can let somebody go, but if you don't do that with dignity and respect, you're not going to work here. We don't go for the yelling or the foot stomping or any of that stuff. But your question is really intriguing, because the people who are here now run fast and they run hard and they work a lot of long hours. And then we'll be converting to a more of a maintenance organization the first quarter 2029 when this business opens a brand new terminal. So I think the key is always hire the best people, and people need to be able to pivot. My perfect scenario is that you can hire somebody who can work in all those environments, but it doesn't always work. It will not be as much fun in 2029 after this terminal is open, just maintaining, because you're not going to build another terminal for generations. So you try and find other things that you can get these folks to focus on. What's our next business? Is it doing something? As you know, there's something extraordinary going on down at Rickenbacker with Androl. with the new drone technology. So we're able to pivot some of our people who are working on the terminal, move them down to really helping. We're very participatory. It's public knowledge. Andrel is leasing real estate from us at Rickenbacker, so we have to get that project done. We have to provide a hangar, work with them so they can actually they're building the hangar, but we have to provide them access to the airfield.
The Innovative Leadership Institute emphasizes the importance of continuous growth and moving forward, especially in an era where we're looking at AI and other fast-moving changes. What have you done in your career to help you adapt and be able to navigate the challenges you've faced across industries and across countries? That is a unique set of skills that many people would love to have.
Well, that's a fun question. I'd like to spend more time with you talking about that. But I think for our perspective at Columbus Airports and mine particularly, you have to get the basics right first. So you have to we have this situation where our terminal has to be clean and it has to be working and it has to be fresh and you have to get the basics done. But I think the real answer to that question is you have to set your ego aside when you're a leader. You have to really be willing to listen and hear people. You have to move slow in some space as people are evolving. But having worked in Europe, look, I walked into I was financing a business in Europe, and most of the people I went and talked to, I had to learn how the bankers worked in Europe, and I had to learn so I was the construction guy and the building guy and the guy who did the M&A work. So we were a small, not super small, but a business. So it's the willingness to really learn anything that you have to learn. Because, look, I had to get an environmental permit in Europe and Belgium. They don't have building permits like we have now. That I'm going back a few decades, Maureen, so forgive me for that. Here you go, we just received, thank you to the city, we just received a building permit on our project. When you're doing a $2 billion project, you're very concerned about a building permit because delays can cost you money, a lot of money, and all the teams. But I really think the biggest skill in that space is listening and continuing to be flexible and having to set your ego aside and say, I may have done this way before, but I'm going to do it differently in the future. And we had technology in Europe that was nowhere else in the world. It was a sortation machine for heavy metals and non-ferrous metals. And it was revered around the world because we could separate aluminum from zinc, from copper, from stainless. And it was really a cool thing. And Europe, which was and still is, I think, in some ways, many ways, environmentally ahead of the United States, they really wanted this technology because it works for them, right? Environmental, they have a lot less space. It's a lot tighter. They are much more concerned. We almost landed this thing in the Port of Rotterdam. And if you know anything about the Port of Rotterdam and you want to talk about innovation, they basically built this huge port in an industrial area out of the sea. They filled it in. I mean, there are innovative things that go in the most basic form. They built real estate. You're familiar with Dubai and the Palm, where they built this island, right? So I think and I'm answering this generally, and if you want more specificity, please ask. But I think it all is about the human heart, and it's about your willingness to succeed and about your willingness to know when to be humble and when to take charge. And there's a pivot there, right? So sometimes as leaders, we have to be more autocratic than we want because the democratic process isn't working. And you really have to just pay attention. As it relates to innovation, there's so much going on around us. AI, Google, if you Google something today, you get an AI response. It is, airports are intuitive, right? So it's trying to modernize what we've done in airports with the boards. You walk in an airport right now, we talk about innovation. You don't really need to look at the board, right? You can look at your phone. You know when the plane's taking off. You know so many things. So it's kind of marrying the old comfort with an old train station with all the destinations up with the fact that that's all at your fingertips. But as it relates to the leadership piece, Maureen, it's how do you figure it out without being defensive, without being egotistical without saying I've done it this way before, so let's continue doing that. It's really about the human heart and about your passion for people and leadership.
One of the things that strikes me is, especially with the volume of change and unpredictability that we've had during COVID, post COVID, not that the world wasn't unpredictable before, but it seems to be escalating. That idea that as leaders, we need to be continually growing and evolving, just like our organizations do. And for many of us, especially successful leaders, acknowledging that you're doing your best and you're still learning and growing along the way too. So you pointed to humility and setting your ego aside. And I've seen you do that you truly ask with an open heart, how is this going? And how can I be better? Which is one of the characteristics that strikes me as what makes you an exemplar for others who are looking for traits that help leaders become more effective.
Well, that's very kind of you, Maureen. As I like to say, experience doesn't make you right, it makes you experienced. So you need to take your experience and listen to everybody else and always say, maybe I'm missing something. I say that all the time, drives my staff crazy. The other thing that I say that makes them crazy is I'm not telling you what to do, but this is how I might handle this. So, but truthfully, what am I missing? That's a question I ask myself every day when something comes back to me that doesn't intuitively feel right. Because I've been in the management. I've been managing for a long time. And the minute you're unwilling to listen to others, the minute that you're unwilling to accept the fact that you were wrong on something, the minute that you're not looking at what could be, is the minute you should stop trying to lead, because you lose your heart, right? Because you don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. I don't know everything about this airport. We have folks that know about this airport. What I know about it is the direction of the company and how we're trying to make this a place. I just told a story this morning where if you don't mind, we had a certification for a police thing, and we talk about culture a lot. And I talked with one of our police officers who has a young child who's having some issues, and hopefully that'll all be fine. But the question I asked this police officer when we're talking about culture, so we talk about letting people go home if they have an issue. There's no question. My wife's sick, get the heck out of here. I don't want you here. But I ask him because police work is very intense, right? You only have so many people per shift, whatever. And I asked this man who I've known since I've been here, we developed a relationship. I said, he told me that he had a child that is having some struggles and having to get set on medication and doing these kinds of things. And I said, has anybody ever told you you couldn't go deal with this? And he said, absolutely not. If I had an issue, if I had to go, the police department. So remember, there's multiple layers. Not everyone gets the memo. So
Yeah.
what I heard from this young man was that the police chief and his lieutenants and his sergeants are all following the same culture that we're trying to create by saying, your son needs you, get the heck out of here and come back to work when you can. And that's really, really important to me.
Thank you. So I want to end on that note and summarize a little bit of what I heard, and please jump in. So crucial is creating that culture of innovation and respect and being a cohesive part of the community. And the story you told about the young police officer, it illustrates beautifully that you set the culture from the top, and yet it hasn't worked if it hasn't rolled down to the most junior person on the team, because that level of respect is expected for everyone in the organization, and the innovation won't happen if everyone doesn't both receive and give that respect to each other.
That's absolutely true. And ironically, I didn't say this, but this police officer, the way we developed a relationship, and I'll tell you one last quick thing, was because he came to me, he was working the third shift, and I can tell you it's hard to get me up at 2 a.m. to come and talk to our third shift people. It's not my favorite thing to do. I'm being really honest with you. But we talked about some things that we wanted, that he thought could be improved because he felt like he could have an audience with me, and we developed a relationship. When we built our terminal, we met with every single custodian. When we started planning and designing this, we met with all three shifts. We said, what can we do better? So it's not for me to know how to manage that process. It's up to these folks who are so committed to this airport that their belief and their passion for having the cleanest airport in the country. They know, Joe, you need to put an extra restroom here. You need to do this so we can deal with different religious populations. It was all about passion for delivering for people.
And that circles back again to the respect for every work group in the organization. That not all leaders work across and through the organization. It's so easy to be incredibly busy and not make the time for every employee group.
It's true. And I think ultimately, and I know this is the focus of your podcast, innovation comes from healthy work environments. Innovation comes from the ability for people to speak up. Innovation comes from people, even when they're wrong and they make, and something that they suggest doesn't work out, that doesn't dissuade them from when they have a good idea to come back. And because you've worked with our technology group, we've continued to innovate there and do newer and better. And we talked about ERP, and we have new technology, and we have body worn cameras for police officers. And we continue to do things requested by the police officers, by the way, because it's become so hostile towards the police officers that they wanted to protect themselves, which would never happen 10 or 20 years ago when bosses wanted to put cameras on people. They were like, no, we don't want to do it. Now the police officers came to us and said, we really want this technology. We really want this innovation because people are saying things about us that aren't true. And the world's evolved.
And we as leaders are evolving with it, we hope.
That's the most critical piece.
So one of the other things you talked about is the DNA, and I heard that expressed in different ways. Life cycle of an organization, going from bureaucratic to entrepreneurial, having grit, that individual people need to have the grit, and the culture feeds also into the DNA. All of those come together and are required to hire the right people within your team, on your board, and that impacts how you interact with the community and how you interact with the mission of building a new airport versus we run steady state.
All true. And again, we don't always get it right, Maureen. We make mistakes. We hire the wrong people. We do things, but it's having been a real estate developer. I was told, no, I like to say when we were trying to build a plant on the east coast of it was up and down New Jersey and Maine and up the whole northeastern coast, New England. I get thrown out of every city hall between Boston and Kennebunkport, Maine. I mean, you can't be defeated. You have to just keep it going, and sometimes it hurts, right? So plenty of mistakes, a lot of smoke on the battlefield, but success because we just have to continue. And stubbornness maybe is either a good trait or a bad trait, but there's certainly some of that involved with grit.
The third thing I heard, and these weren't your words, but the idea of collaboration with your board, with the community, with business leaders, with your team, that while you have more autonomy as an airport authority, you wouldn't have gotten where you've gotten as a CEO and president without cultivating those relationships, hearing the feedback, negative and positive, and building alignment, which I'm assuming has meant micro adjustments and macro adjustments over time to ensure that you're meeting the goals of the largest group of stakeholders.
That's absolutely true. And what I would say to that is while we spent a lot of time dealing with naysayers and people who are not happy for whatever reasons, the true story here is collaboration. It's cooperation. It's leadership from our board, and they never blinked. I mean, they always knew, but realizing these people that are driving by have an opinion and they know nothing about really what we're doing. Our board sits in all these meetings, and our board is participatory in our planning, and our board knows how we're spending money, and our board manages and signs our documents when we go to the bond markets and sell $1,200,000,000 worth of debt. And the bond rating agencies are saying, well, Columbus Airport, you really have something good going on there. So, I mean, we're vindicated through the business process. So our board knows this every step of the way. Our team knows this every step of the way. The second guessers and the people who are out there who for whatever reason want to be heard, and with all due respect, they don't know our locker room. Our locker room continues to flourish and execute.
So I want to wrap up by asking where people could learn more about the Columbus Airport and about you.
Well, I'm not that interesting, Maureen. You can find out more information about the terminal project at flycolumbus.com.
So thank you very much, Joe. And thank you to our listeners for joining us today on Innovating Leadership, Co-Creating Our Future. If you're interested in elevating the quality of your leadership, the Innovative Leadership Institute offers executive advising and organizational transformation services. Send me a note at inquiries@innovativeleadership.com. The world's most successful leaders are created here.